All right, we are navigating some fun technology challenges to make our way to this stream with all of you. These two men probably don't need formal introductions because they're everywhere. And if you're in a conversation like this, you have heard of Joel and you have heard of Dr. Zach. And I have had the honor of learning about them and the work they do through screens for years, but actually got to hold each of them in my arms with and getting to meet them this year. And when you meet good people, you hang on to them. And so I hope today is a conversation amongst friends and tens of thousands of other people from all over the world on the other side of the camera. And it is just such a privilege to have leaders who hold such an important ground and safety and security for Mother Earth and the land and food in this conversation. So Joel and Dr. Zach, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. It's an honor and a delight to be with you always. Both of you, Zach too. Yes.
I appreciate you both. Thank you for the fellowship. The opportunity to be together with the global community is always powerful. So thank you all for joining, and thanks for tuning in with your time, which is your most valuable asset in life. So thank you for joining.
And you know, when I do look at you as these generals, these leaders in the earth and the land and food conversations, one of the things that comes up, you know, in with both of you is the importance of fellowship and community and connectedness. And like I said, you know, I'm a hugger. So in a time of, you know, social distance or isolation, it has literally hurt my heart to watch people be put in these situations. So I'd love for each of you to just dive in and let's talk about the importance of creating community and gathering at the table for things like this. Dr. Zach, you want to go first?
I'll give that a shot with this technology. It has been exciting at the same time that it's been horrifying, I think, to see this past year unfold, in the sense that really what's going on is we've got a situation where there's a equal and opposite reaction going on to one of the biggest common narratives that we've ever seen. And so for all of the isolation demands and everything else we've seen, I think we've seen an incredible, reversal of that in community. And I'm very excited that I think this event is actually symptomatic of it, right? Is that we've seen huge swaths of the population take a look at their lives and just ask some deep questions. Is this really what I want to be doing with my life? Is this job the one I want to be working? Is this, town that we're living in? Is this what was working? So people have done deep, dives on how do I come into alignment with the world? So I think that's been the silver lining behind a journey of humanity that has really been unprecedented in its effort towards isolation. And we certainly have some incredible science from the last 15 years in genetics to show us that this human condition is hardly human, and we really are a result of a giant, complex superorganism when we think of the human body. And the superorganism is about 70 trillion human cells, which is an extraordinary number. It's one of the few things in the world that has an equal number to the national debt. But the effect of seeing all of those 70 trillion cells surrounded by 1.4 quadrillion bacteria, surrounded by 14 quadrillion mitochondria, the numbers are so astrologic in scale, and that's what it means to be human. And so what happens at the microscopic level to create human health is this phenomenal cooperative village of biodiversity that allows for human life to emerge. That really, dates back on a planet too. Like life has emerged from the planet, from the soils, from the intention of life, that lies behind the universe here. That intention for life flows through a mechanism of biodiversity and adaptation. That's how it all has happened. And it's so beautiful to see the intention of life manifest in something as complex as a human being, but to see that human identity really challenged by the genetics in the last 10 years to say you're hardly human until you are that village, until you are a global community of microbes and bacteria and fungi and viruses, everything working together to emerge into your full potential. And so I get excited that the micro is a reflection of the macro, and that when we isolate, we choose a lower vibration of existence. We choose a state of chaos rather than syntropy. The way in which nature works on Joel's farm is that he brings as many species as he can in, whether it be in the form of cover crops or the animals on the land or the people that visit the land, and he brings all this biodiversity together, and organization happens out of the chaos of the natural systems. Disconnected comes connection and syntropy, and you get the best tomato you've ever eaten, or you get the healthiest hog running around in the woods. That syntropy of health, of life, is literally the result of community. And so I just really honor every farmer out there that is doing this transition from monocrop to community. And it takes a mind shift. It takes a huge practice of forgetting everything you've been taught in the last 10, 40 years, and remembering what you know at the deep cellular level. We need to remember ourselves in the context of this life around us, and we need to remember our role within it. And so it's exciting to me that what Joel has shown us is a remembrance of an existence that predated technology, that predated our Mr. Fix-It mentality of we got to go micromanage nature, we got to do this and that to it, and we got to create more productivity out of nature, which is always hilarious to be like, you look around at the planet, you're like, really? We got to one up nature on productivity? Like, she's kind of rocking on this thing for a good long time. It's just funny that we develop these mentalities like, oh, we have technology, we can probably best nature again.
Yeah,
it's an amazing thing. So Joel, thank you for what you do. It's always an inspiration to be around you and what you do on that farm, and the community you create at the micro and macro levels is working.
Yeah, thank you, Zach. And I would just add that, we've learned a lot about the microbiome, and of course Zach's been a world leader in that. But we also have learned a lot about the soil biome. In fact, it's interesting that with all of, as quote unquote smart as humans are now, we only have names for less than 10% of the soil microbes. When you talk about community, think about the actinomycetes, the gibberellas, the mycorrhizia. I mean, we've named some, but only 10%. So 90% of the beings in the soil that are making decisions and trade and responses, a quadrillion decisions per second per cubic yard. I mean, think about that. That we know, what we know is just tiny compared to what we don't know. And so, I'm still looking for a world where when you go in for into the banker for a business plan loan, the banker says, well, this is a great plan, but what's it going to do to the earthworms in our community? Are the earthworms, is their health, at the end of the day, is their health more important than the Dow Jones Industrial Average? I would suggest yes, it is. And yet this is a community largely invisible because it's microscopic, just like our microbiome, largely invisible. I mean, we see the tear on the skin, but we don't see the tear either emotionally. We don't see the tear in the gut. We don't see those kinds of things. And so I think that this fellowship that you started with, Dr. Devin, is all about integration rather than segregation. And we live in a very Greco-Roman mechanistic mindset that compartmentalizes things rather than and ends up segregating things rather than integrating things. And you think about throughout history, if an organization wants to break somebody, they put them in isolation. I mean, what's the worst thing in prison, right? We're going to put you in the isolation chamber. And so here we were right when a new, let's agree that it was a new disease, was coming across. We put people in the most anti-human posture they could be put in. you know, we need to feel needed. We need to feel affirmed. We, you know, those kinds of things are incredibly important. And so, just quickly, as one of our responses to that here at the farm, at Polyface, was last year we started these series of, we called them gatherings. We didn't want to call them events. An event is something that, you know, somebody plans and you go to. We wanted to be a gathering where attendees are as important as, you know, as the people putting it on, right? And there's an MIT professor who's done a really interesting kind of one of these out in the future prophetic lectures, and he says the farm of the future is going to be the nexus of fellowship, information, and sustenance. Fellowship, information, and sustenance. And so we basically opened up our farm as a platform for organizations that wanted to get together, but not in a, you know, not in a Marriott, Sheraton, Hilton conference center under HVAC, fluorescent lights, and artificial air. And we're already booked for this year. Organizations are coming to us. In fact, I had a regional, not quite the CEO, but way up there, yesterday asked me if we could host their annual bankers convention here. You know, it's a beautiful spot. It's serene, it's peaceful. There's places for the kids to play, you know, and we can offer the world's best food. And so what better place to create fellowship, information, and sustenance than farms? And so I hope that this idea of looking to farms as the as the spear point of healing, if you will, is a real positive thing. And so yeah, we're all into people centricity and physical presence. And if you're scared, then don't come. That's fine. It's a big world, and nobody's coercing. But for those who want to still give hugs and facial get-togethers, this offers a very safe place because it's immersed in plant and tree and leaf bacteria, and not a bunch of recycled air through an HVAC system.
Well, and it was, you know, I got to come out for Holistic Hilda's event with my twin 10-year-olds and be out there with you. That's where I got to connect with you this year. And watching my boys light up. You know, I'm from the Midwest. We have, you know, friends who farm, but watching them hold the chickens and go check out the pigs and seeing what you've done in the pastures and talking about compost, it gave us so much to talk about. And I told them that we're going to go back next year. I know you and I are still going to figure out the logistics of that. But watching the curiosity of the child and you guys using words like remember, it seems like the name of the game isn't like, what do we need to learn, but what do we need to unlearn, right? There is this, you know, there's a healthy debate around germ theory, terrain theory, and all these different, what the foundational pillars have been for us in food, in medicine, and all of that. If you zoom out and we look at what's the number one thing that you think our culture needs to unlearn that would open a door to massive potential and possibility? I'll let either one of you, whoever wants to go first.
I'll jump in first because mine will be short. I think Zach will add a lot to it. Mine is short because we now know way more about ancient history and archaeology and anthropology than we did when I was in grade school. Okay, you know, and learning manifest destiny and this vacant North America that the Europeans came and took over, and we now know, for example, that North America produced way more nutrition 500 years ago than it does today. That should sober anybody. Now that wasn't all eaten by humans. You know, we had 200 million beavers. that were making 8% of our surface area water. Now it's less than 4%. So you lose evapotranspiration. You lose mass for ambient temperature fluctuations. There are all sorts of things that happen. You lose migratory fowl routes. Audubon said he sat under a tree in 1820 and couldn't see the sun for 3 days for the flock of passenger pigeons that flew over. Can you imagine a flock of passenger pigeons blotting out the sun for 3 days? The abundance, and there were 2 million wolves, eating 20 pounds of meat a day. And so my quick, when you talk about remembering and unlearning, what I think our greatest need is to study these ancient credible patterns that were actually more symbiotic and abundant than GMOs, John Deere tractors, and glyphosate, and take our technology. I'm not worried to go back to the washboard, okay? But let's take our technology, rather than overriding that. Let's view that pattern, those ancient platforms, as a womb to be caressed, not a reluctant partner to be dominated.
I'm just struck by, the pathway back to that space, it's so incredible that we, reverse that abundance in such short order. And I think it's critical, as a physician, we're trained to, quick look at a disease and then come up with the pharmaceutical solution to it, and what you find out over time of practicing medicine in that form is that you're chasing symptoms. Cancer is a symptom of a disconnect from self, ultimately. And, chemotherapy is not something that actually reconnects you to self, so there's just this fundamental breakdown that happened when I was developing chemotherapy. As I was watching that drug go into clinical trials under my, care of these patients, I realized that, no matter how good I got at doing the symptom management, I was never going to solve for the cancer epidemic. And so I think there's a huge opportunity for us to really think about, right now, how do we find the root cause of the decimation of the abundance that Joel is so accurately speaking to here. And I believe that what we bring into it to destroy the abundance is the mindset of scarcity. And so when we fail to understand that nature has designed itself over billions of years of this emergence of the universe and our planet ultimately, and then life on Earth, and just the beauty of all of it, the abundance of intelligence that is behind that design is so extraordinarily obvious as you get down into the atomic quantum level of the physics, or you go zoom out to the biology of the planet or the mechanisms of astrologic physics, whatever it is. We moved into this so recently with an attitude of scarcity, and I believe that the concept of scarcity really got infected in the human mind when we developed the belief of ownership. That moment was when we lost everything. When we thought we could own a piece of land, or we thought we could own our house, or thought we could own our spouse, or whatever it is. As soon as you go into that dominion mindset, you only have this much suddenly. And you have this tiny plot of land where moments ago, before you came to believe that you were going to own 6 acres, you had the whole world. And that's what it feels like to be a child. The whole world is in front of you. You feel this abundance as a child. You feel plugged in. You can only see opportunity everywhere. And you have this deep trust that is going to come to you, and that removal of that kind of child of the universe, child of God kind of thing, to this state of, oh gosh, I need to own this thing. And anybody who's ever owned a house knows that thing owns you before you've ever owned it. In 30 years, you're gonna be paying that mortgage. It owned you on day one. That thing owns you, and you are a indentured servant to that thing that you own from that moment forward. And so we have contaminated our relationship to what might be called nature, God, universe, we've contaminated that with this deep-seated belief that we need to own and control our little piece of the pie. And by so doing, we lost the feast. And so what is the pathway back to this abundance that Joel is talking about? Excitingly, it is actually a pathway back to letting go. If we start to surrender our desperate need to own something because of our beliefs of scarcity, and we start to understand the abundance within the human condition, within the human body for sure, but just across the board, abundance is such a fascinating concept. It is literally infinite. There is no end to it. And that's how life has emerged on this earth. We've been through 5 great extinction events by the fossil record, losing 97% of life every time. And look what happens afterwards. It is more abundant. There is more life. There is more biodiversity. There's more intelligence. There's more connectedness. It's just like, it is relentless in its journey to a perfected future. And I think what we're being called to in this decade, even at the tipping point of this 6th great extinction, we are being called to decide, make a decision. Will we reconnect? Will we believe that there is an answer? And will we surrender that and let it be? You know, that great Beatles song there. But let's move towards this possibility that it already was finished. We came in and unfinished it by trying to own it, by trying to control for it, and trying to resist change. Resisting change is a setup for massive discomfort because the universe is moving at a very fast rate. And so in your life, if you are using dominion and ownership, and you're using, you know, this structure of human relationship to our houses, human relationship to our jobs, human relationships to our children, human relationships to our spouses, that tend to be these, you know, exclusive ownership kind of mindsets. Those are my children. Really? Those are yours? Like, you own those things? You really think so? And the moment you have that mentality, you have an overwhelming sense of responsibility and failure every day because you know you're not going to be able to meet the potential of those children. They're not yours. Those children came from something much deeper and more intelligent and ancient than you. It came from the universe. It came flowing through this woman into this world. And as parents, we are given the gift of opportunity to be witness to a journey of human development, to a journey of human expression. But they are not ours. And so we need to start to just into this exciting journey of surrender. Let's open our hands and give back everything we have received and see what then can be made space for. Because I really believe that we could recover this current extinction at a pace never witnessed on the earth before. You know, it took 40 million years to, you know, recover from the last one. 40 million in my mindset is a pretty long time. Mother Earth doesn't seem, that's a blink in time for her, but with our participation, Joel has proved that we can be co-creators through our understanding and alignment with this intelligence, with this nature. We become co-creators, and it accelerates, and life comes rushing in to this space. And so Joel is literally playing a role that looks a lot like the seraphim in scriptures and all of this. The seraphim are carrying out the will of God kind of thing, and as we read ancient scriptures. Any farmer that applies their hands to the soil and to the livestock is doing the work of co-creation. It is creating abundance where there was none before. Joel's piece of land was crap land when he bought it. It was dead. It was lacking all biodiversity. Now you go there and it's just like, this man has manifest with his team and all the people around him and all the interns that have flowed through there to learn. And he's created a community that co-created with Mother Nature, recreate abundance in just a couple short decades. No 40 million years, a couple decades. And so we get to play this role of co-creator, I believe, if we will come into alignment. Joel, how does that feel?
Oh, well, you're very kind and gracious, but yes, when people ask me, you know, what floats your boat, what floats my boat is to be able to walk out the back door each day and step into, you know, to an ecological womb, that I can either heal or hurt, or I can either I can either caress or I can control. And and so what floats my boat is to just in that moment take in the magnitude, I'm gonna start crying here in a minute, but to take in the magnitude of the privilege, of being able to come alongside and be hands and feet for something bigger than I am. And that's a profound, well, it's a sacred place. And so, we spend a lot of time here on the farm talking about sacred and noble things. And we've got to turn young people away. People say, oh, people don't want to farm anymore. No. There are plenty of young people who want to farm today, but nobody has given them a vision of sacredness that's worthy of their legacy. They tell them farming's dirty work. It doesn't pay. Nobody loves a farmer. I mean, and that's often true. I mean, when's the last time you heard a group of soccer moms stand around and talk about their little child prodigies? And one of them says, well, mine's going to be an astrophysicist. And everybody, oh, that's cool. One of them, mine's 4 years old and playing Beethoven on the piano. Oh, wow, that's cool. And one of them says, well, my little Amy, she actually wants to be a farmer. Can you imagine all the other moms saying, oh, wow, that's so cool, No, we just went through our 2-week checkout program for next year's stewards. We don't call them interns, we call them stewards, because we want them to understand that they're caretakers of something beyond them. That in Zach's words, obviously, that they don't own. Okay, the courthouse says we own this, but we don't. We're just pilgrims. We're moving through. We didn't put it here, and we caretake. Anyway, and one of them was telling me how angry his parents were that he was here because they paid for this college education, and here he is wanting to go play in the dirt, and there's this huge, family. Our child has failed, squandered this great academic legacy, by going to play in the dirt. And it's not the first time we've dealt with that. We deal with that along. And so, at some point, and I don't want to detract for a moment on the heroes of front, the frontline workers and all in our, in this whole, but at some point, a culture needs to appreciate that those who build soil and hydrate the landscape and make more breathable air, and that those are, we're frontline workers too. Now, there's a lot of bad ones. I mean, the history of civilization is a history of soil erosion and desertification, right? That's the history of civilization to a large extent, but it doesn't have to be that way. The hands that hurt can also heal, and so all it takes is a completely different mindset that Zach has so eloquently articulated to realize that we are, we are participants in a magnificent thing that's beyond us. And yes, we say we own the house, but actually the house is just one little insert into a great cosmic, ecology, right? It doesn't make its own rain. It doesn't, and so to realize that when we hit the water faucet, that water faucet gives us life-sustaining water that was a vapor drop that coagulated around a piece of bacteria from a tree leaf to form a cloud that condensed and made rain, and these little drops hit the ground and they percolated down through the humus and just over a period of weeks gradually filtered into probably an aquifer or groundwater and eventually came out, in some municipal water system. We don't see those kind of connections. And I think when you were asking about fellowship, yes, we want a fellowship as humans with each other. But man, if we can cultivate a fellowship with the earthworms, with the water, with the air we breathe, right? If we can fellowship with the life community around us, we will become more responsible stewards. And that's ultimately where we need to head. We need to head to more responsible stewardship.
And oh, what a world that will be, as we do. Because I mean, a couple things come up as I'm listening to both of you, in terms of both of you have this radical reverence for the earth, for life, for fellowship, for these things. And you are committed to your own responsibility and our collective responsibility. And so, if we take these ideas and we talk about this mindset shift of, okay, if we start to leave the paradigm of war and control and dominance, and we start to enter a paradigm of co-creation and resilience and adaptation and oneness, take us into a couple of actions, right? If this is a solution-based gathering, this event that we've put together, and you're going to reach through this camera and put a couple tools into the belt of the people gathering here today, what does it look like to make that shift within their own lives as an individual, but then also some commitments as a collective? What do we need to do to to go with this flow of this paradigm shift?
Well, I've got a kind of a three-part recipe, because I get this question all the time. And I live the context. I live in the city. What can I do, right? And so I kind of have a little three-part recipe. The first one, and it might be simplistic, but here it is. The first ingredient is grow something yourself. Do something yourself. Touch your life with the mystery and majesty of life. It might be something as simple as a vermicomposting bin under your kitchen sink. So you eliminate the garbage, dispose all the trash can, and you put your edibles into some earthworms, and those castings feed your plants. It might be a beehive on the roof of the house. It might be a hanging little PVC pocketed herb garden on your front porch stoop. We've got so many cool little urban gardening type devices now that you can grow. You can do something. You can touch life virtually anywhere. In fact, in my latest book, Polyface Micro, I have there a design plan so that you can have rabbits and chickens in a New York Manhattan apartment without smell, and you can have your own eggs and feed your kitchen scraps to to two chickens in your apartment. I mean, it doesn't take any more room than an entertainment center, a flat screen TV, or a dog kennel. So anyway, so number one is jump in here, do something yourself, grow something yourself. Number two is to get in your kitchen. We will not have an authentic food chain, if you will, a chain that honors the soil, the processing, we will not have a food chain if it doesn't end in somebody's kitchen. So we need to get in our kitchens for preparation, processing, packaging, preservation, and that includes your own home larder. We don't use the term larder anymore, but 80 years ago, if I went to your city and said, "Where's the food?" the food would be in people's pantries, in their larders. There'd be dried fruit. There'd be canned goods. There'd be jerky. There'd be dried beans that you grew in your garden. There'd be canned squash and green beans and applesauce that you ground, you made it in your thing. So cooking from scratch, buying unprocessed, that sort of thing. Actually, developing your kitchen as an actual, as a conduit, to your own health. That's between acquisition and eating. Culinary arts. I mean, this is the deal. Culinary arts and learn how to do things. I'm just amazed. This is the biggest mistake that people like me made, 40 years ago. We were predicting the future, and we thought by now the local food thing, everybody's going to be, cooking from scratch and getting unprocessed. Well, the truth is that around our place, our joke is what they really want is polyface Hot Pockets. And convenience has just gone off the charts. And so learning how to smell, taste, work with just as a food sculptor. Okay, so number one, do something yourself, grow something yourself. Number two, get in your kitchen. And number three, develop a relationship with a local farmer. That's not hard. There are lots of us around. In fact, there are more around now than there ever have been. And so it's you don't have to go on the Disney vacation. You don't have to watch Netflix every night. Carve out some entertainment vacation. You can call it infotainment time. Infotainment, and go take your kids, visit a couple farms, develop a relationship with your food shed, in your community, so that you have a sense of what's available, what's being produced, and the people that are producing them. Many of these farmers are 10 customers away from being able to leave their town job and be on a farm full time. And you can be the person that can bring that farmer to a tip over point, to where they can actually do their calling and their vocation full time. So those are kind of my three things: grow something yourself, get in your kitchen, and go visit a farm.
I would say I have the same three things, so I'll save everybody time on that. But I will maybe drill down on. I mean, I literally have said that exact sequence over and over again over the last 8 years, and which is so lovely, because you've got a physician and a farmer sitting here telling you the pathway to the future is the same three things. The pathway to your health, to prevent cancer in your life, to prevent your vulnerability of your immune system to the virome, whatever it is the same three things. It is literally grow some food, cook some food, share that food with other people. And I think that may be a little nuance that Joel and I really share a lot of passion for, which is it's one thing to cook food. It's an artistic outlet. It's creative. It's a reconnection to your nature. It's reconnection to being human. But the real biologic impact when it comes to health is not the nutrients in the food. It's the community and fellowship that is built by sitting around a table together in the evening and listening to one another and seeing the world through the storytelling of another person. We are not made of cells or molecules. We are made of story. And I love that quote from ages back. We are made of story. And what are the stories you're currently listening to? What's filling your day? Is it Netflix and CNN and all of this stuff, or Fox News, or whatever it is? Like, what story have you decided to fill your mind and heart with? And step back and ask yourself, is that what you want your mind and heart filled with? Would you like to actually create a multi-generational table in the evening and invite an elder from the community who's maybe isolated and lonely, and have them come over and sit next to you and your kids and expose your family to a different perspective? Hear story from the 1960s, 50s, 60s, go back in time through the eyes of another human being and get some perspective on what's going on right now. What's going on right now is only scary if you are seeing it as an isolated, human moment. You don't understand it in the context of history or biology or whatever it is, but connect to another person's story and it will change your life. And food is the natives for that. Food has always been the natives for community. Any village gathering that ever happened in all of history always started with 3 to 4 days or maybe weeks of food preparation for that gathering. The food is the natus of community and fellowship, of reconnection. And so I can't overemphasize Joel's 1, 2, 3. Grow something, eat, cook something, share it with another person, and then move into this space where you are starting to experience life in its vitality, rather than that disconnected nature. And the meet the farmer piece, the third one, I've had that experience myself in spades over the last few years, not really having anticipated what that was going to do to my life. But everywhere I go now, every state I stop in, somebody's calling, can you come see my farm? Can you come visit my farm? And so this past week I was in Virginia and was turning a compost and helping lay down some new compost across the beds that are needing spring prep and all that for this tiny farm run by a husband-wife team that work part-time on the farm and then work full-time jobs to make ends meet. But they're building this system. It's called Peace Farm. I'm sorry, Piecemeal Farm, spelled P-E-A-C-E. Piecemeal Farm, and it's just a lovely space out, right off the highway between Richmond and Charlottesville. An unexpected little, manifestation of beauty. They grow cotton. They grow organic cotton in this, just a single strip, and they're intermixed with a bunch of other species of squash and pumpkins going right now, and corn, and they've got all these species, but there's a strip of cotton in the midst of it. And when asked what the cotton was for and how she was making money off of that, she said, "Oh, we don't make money off that. My mother spins cotton and is a passionate knitter." And so to imagine this family is growing their own cotton, busheling this up, four or five, big trash sack kind of sized containers for mom to go weave and spin into her wool or her cotton, and then to go and turn that into clothing. And Christmas time comes around and you're receiving something from mom that you grew in the backyard. Like, it's just so insanely beautiful to see the potential that's sitting in front of us for humans to be able to communicate love towards each other at this higher vibration of creativity and industry and productivity that is showing us the web of life in its very process. And so I just honor everybody who is starting to do the 1, 2, 3. Meet the farmer, cook the food, grow something. And I can't emphasize this enough to all of you parents that are watching your children suffer right now. I see every day in my clinic, autism, major depression, psychotic disorders in teenagers, suicidality, homicidal thought processes. Like, it is terrifying to see your children suffer under the disconnect, under the isolation. These three things can be an alternative to everything that Western medicine is so eager to roll out to those kids. Methamphetamines and Ritalin for the ADHD, or antidepressants and antibiotics and everything else that we're pouring on them. We need to stop that and just simply do the three things. Get that kid out on a farm every week and watch them reconnect. I'm getting exhausted of hearing parents like, I don't know how to get my kids off screens. It's like, well, that's because you don't know how to get out of the house. Like, you literally don't know how to reconnect to nature yourself. Get out and know the farmer, number 3, and you will completely get the whole family off of screens, because you'll be literally out there, raking turmeric out of the field with them in the fall. It's going to be just such a powerful opportunity for you not to overcome depression or anxiety in your children, to find out what it feels like to be alive. And I think we are losing track of that. We are so isolated as families. The fact that we call it a nuclear family coming out of the post World War II era, that should have been a red flag, right? Like, this might be explosive and violently destructive to everything we've ever seen before when we created the nuclear family. That's insanity that we put those two words together and thought that that was a rational idea. And we did that idea, and then 70 years later, we find ourselves in the situation we're in, and that there is such high anxiety and depression in mothers who are isolated and, out of community and feeling like they have to raise their children because it is their children and they own this thing and they got to make this thing work because it's all on them. That's never how it worked. The village, certainly, that I was down in Ecuador this year, down in the rainforest, the Achuar tribe has been living in this region for 40,000 years. It boggles your mind. Like, this is same history there that we have to the Aboriginal people in Australia. 40,000 years living in the same communities, and they are completely balanced with their ecosystem. They have no destruction of the rainforest. There's no sense of scarcity. There's only abundance, and they don't store anything. It's so beautiful. There's no refrigerators. There's no cabinets, and they have a cooking fire, and they wake up in the morning, walk out into the jungle that's been providing for 40,000 years for them, and bring that back in, and they create food that they then share in community. And at no point do those parents think that those kids running around the whole village are theirs. They understand them to be part of the system of life around them, but they don't have ownership over them. They have a sense that the whole village is contributing to the experience of those children and raising those children. The jungle is literally in relationship to those children and raising those children more so than the mom is responsible for. And so when did we pull Mowgli out of there? Is that old story. That's another story of colonialism, another story of abuse, another story of, and so it's like we cannot seem to get the Western mind to let go of this sense of dominion and abuse and extraction and everything else. But meet the farmer, and you'll find somebody who is working towards this co-creative relationship and back into abundance, and it will change your fundamental belief of who you are and what you're doing.
Isn't the compartmentalization of this compartmentalization is so in the Western DNA. I mean, it started with with the god of the underworld, the god of fertility, the god of rain, the god of so they completely bifurcated God and broke him up into little itty bitty pieces, and then now we compartmentalize to where we don't appreciate that our investment strategy is part of our mental health, for that matter, of our legacy. We send the kids to school for an expert to edge, and I don't want to get off on too many rabbit trails here, but we don't put holism in our money, our entertainment. We say we have to go somewhere to commune with. You got to get on a jet and spend jet fuel to go to some area to be in nature. No, you don't. You are nature. You are in nature right now, whether you want to be or not. And you are voting. You are voting with your actions. You're voting with your money. You're voting with your mentality, with your messaging. You are voting every day as to whether your immersion in nature right now is a positive or a negative outcome. And so being able to actually create complementarity rather than competitiveness in the different things that we do. I mean, this is part of my problem with the whole cap and trade thing. So we'll pay for 500 acres of trees over here, so now we can go burn up 10 jet fuels of energy over here. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, and so we need to just realize that we are corporately and personally participants in this thing, and we can't levitate our way out of it. Zach, as you were talking, I'm sure you're familiar with Richard Louve's nature deficit disorder. He invented the term, and I'm a huge believer in nature deficit. And as I grew up here on the farm, our kids grew up here on the farm. I mean, building dams in the creek, forts in the trees. I mean, this is make believe. I mean, the things you can do with a stick. A stick can be a sword, a gun, a wand, a baton. How many things can be with a stick? And so we've got all this, as you said so beautifully, this childlike imagination. But then we come into adulthood, and we've tried to please our parents. We've tried to please the teacher. We've tried to please the principal. We try to please the preacher. We try to please the employer. We try to please the professor. And as we come into adulthood, we completely lose this imagination. As we segregate our lives, well, I have to go to work. I have to place my money in a 401k plan, where somebody else takes care of it, and it's like adult life rips apart our wonder of being a participant, like a frog on the edge of a pond. A frog on the edge of a pond never wakes up in the morning and says, I don't think I'm going to participate today. I'm just going to I'm just not going to be a part of this. No, every frog participates all day long, and we are like that. We are participants whether we want to be or not. And I think what I would encourage all the people listening to us today is to realize that being a participant is both a wonderful privilege. It's beyond expression. And it's a wonderful responsibility to be given. It's like go look yourself in the mirror and say, I've been promoted to a participant. If everybody can leave this podcast, go to the mirror, look at themselves and say, I've just got a promotion today. I've been promoted to a participant in the healing of my life and the people within my sphere of influence. That's a great office to hold, and so I'm just trying to articulate some ideas that folks can maybe think about to move them along on this path, because it's intimidating. If you haven't felt like a participant, if you felt like, man, this thing is out of control, I'm just a speck that I don't have any control is not a good word, but you know what I'm saying. I don't. It's beyond anything that I can then deal with. That's very disempowering. Very disempowering.
Yeah.
But if we embrace participation, then suddenly, instead of being reactive, we're proactive.
Yep.
And that's a game changer.
It's the game changer. And, as I get goosebumps throughout this conversation for so many different reasons, but especially as we talk about children. And this is why I'm grateful for COVID, and why I'm so hopeful for the future is because there are more people having these conversations than ever before, more people ready to participate than ever before. And we're not only asking, what kind of world are we going to leave our children, but what type of children are we going to leave to the world? And that's, bringing them into the conversation and having them visit the farmers, and more people homeschooling and unschooling and valuing learning how to play in the dirt, learning, about food, cooking in the kitchen, learning measurements, learning real life applicable things are as important and maybe more important than these textbooks and these devices that, we had turned to in school for so long. And so this is a divine opportunity. This is the fork in the road on so many levels. And one of the conversations that I have had with my kids a lot, in our family, my mom passed on a few years ago. My father-in-law passed on a few years ago. My uncle, all with cancer, all types of things. So we have very open discussions about death in our household. And I think one of the things that has made our matrix, our family matrix, our internal matrix very different is we don't fear death the same way a lot of people do. And watching both of you, I know that what makes you so special and gifted at what you do is your reverence for life, but also your appreciation for the death cycle, the death part of the cycle. And so if we could speak into death a little bit, and that, you know, a lot of this has been fear driven, and maybe, yeah, I want to toss that one over to you guys. Let's talk about death and its role in this and how we heal some of that wound.
Okay, I'll take a stab at that for a few minutes, but I think that, you know, Joel, you get to see this, you know, front and center every day on a farm. It's you know, the cycle of life, the rebirth process is inherent in the farming process. It's every day, everywhere. And you know, if you're not a farmer, then maybe you do own a house or whatever it is. I would offer that your house is dying all of the time, and you're trying to rebirth that thing all the time. You're putting new paint on, you're doing this, that. You're in this constant state of maintenance because there is an inherent state of decay designed into nature so that there is rebirth. And so, you know, what I would offer, you know, is a couple-fold maybe, but to start with, as I sit in clinic with patients with stage 4 cancer or whatever it is, or, you know, Alzheimer's, dementia, or whatever is this kind of overwhelming sense of out of my control, it's attacking my body, I'm a victim to this thing. It's a journey into that first, you know, meeting for a couple hours where I really enjoy listening to their whole story, the arc of life. Where were you born? Were you born vaginally by C-section? Did you have antibiotics as a kid? No, like you were thriving as, you know, a middle child. Where were you in the lineup? You know, what you really have passion when you were 7 years old about? You know, and dive into all of that for a good long time, because until you understand the story of this human being, you have no idea what the stressors were that would have led to that event to occur in the first place. You need to understand the origin of this human and its connection to a soul. And when you find a soul journey rather than a human reactive fear journey of cancer, when you find a soul journey, then you can reconnect that human to its soul. And that's when spontaneous healing happens. And we see it all the time. We see it in, you know, Western medicine has to see spontaneous healing of stage 4 cancer far more frequently than you would think and is ever talked about, because it confuses the hell out of us. Like, you got a riddled body of cancer, and then suddenly they show up for their 3-month scan and it's all gone. And it's like, well, that's not, chemotherapy has never done that. Chemotherapy doesn't cause spontaneous cure ever. And so, you know, you see humans, you know, once in a while tapping into this amazing regenerative capacity within them. And I believe that's what's happened in those spontaneous healings as a human has reconnected to its soul. It's lost the fear and guilt and shame elements that have been so thoroughly programmed into it that it's created the sense of scarcity to begin with in their life, which creates all their insecurities, which creates their belief of failure, which creates their separation from the abundance of the divine that's trying to work through that individual. We need to let go of, you know, all of that in an instant. It is possible to let it go if you can reconnect. And so watch the soul journey. And so when you have somebody sitting at your dinner table, ask the old stories. Like, what was childhood like for you? And what was the arc as you went through relationships and find yourself here at 80 years old, and, you know, your perspective, and listen to that, not for the human elements, but for the bigger narrative, which is, what did this soul sign up for in this journey? Because I really, in my own life, I've had some overwhelming experiences, you know, throughout life. But this year, the biggest overwhelming experience of my year was a moment when I was sitting on my couch and suddenly had this like outside of the body experience that I could see all of my journey through all of life and realize I had this overwhelming sense and demonstration to me visually in this moment that I had written the whole thing. If you had asked me seconds before that what my human journey had been, I would have given you a human journey. I would have given you a narrative like, well, all these external forces happened and external things happened and put me on my path, and this is how my life unfolded. But in that moment where you find out your soul is writing your path so that you can find this moment of possibility of reconnection, it solves for the entire purpose of that lifespan. And so often as a hospice physician, I've sat by the bedside of people in comas and everything else and listening to their family stories through their children or whatever. And then suddenly that person comes to out of a coma and says the most profound statements of love you've ever heard. The most profound observations of beauty in their children or their life, or they are seeing the whole soul narrative because the veil has thinned for them in those weeks in the coma, or as they approach the moment of rebirth on the other side of this veil. They're seeing through it, and they come back with intense messages of healing. And I see reconciliation happen between parents and children in seconds that had festered for decades and decades, half a century, healed in a split moment because truth was spoken with a vibration that just healed the whole epigenetic pattern of belief of separation, and it's you against me, and all the soul is writing the journey to this. And what I think there's an invitation for is, let's not wait for the veil to come to that moment of rebirth. Scripture tells us that we need to die to ourselves every day. And if you do that, the freedom you will experience, the insane sense of vitality within your body, the intense experience of connection to wisdom and knowledge and truth, it's overwhelmingly beautiful. But are you willing to die to yourself every day? And it's that willingness piece that is all you're being called to. You don't have to understand what it's going to look like. You don't have any idea what it's going to look like. I guarantee it. You have no idea how beautiful your life is. You have no idea how loved you are by the divine, by the nature you live in. You have no idea, because we have spent generations programming that belief out of you, that understanding out of you. So you do not understand. But my goodness, does that soul still write a perfect journey to give you the opportunity to be willing to die to yourself today, which means you're going to have to make some sacrifices. You're going to have to let go of things that you currently think you hold dear in your head. But the only place that isolation really exists is in the human mind. And so how do you find that path to this moment of willingness to step back into everything? You literally need to let go of your senses. We have a brain that is over dependent upon its information stream from sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. These five senses have given us the impression that we are separate from everything. But there's a deeper sense. There's an extra sensory capacity within you to feel something much more relevant and much more deep than what your five senses are trying to trick you into thinking the reality is around you. These human eyeballs cannot tell you what the world looks like. Roses are not red. That's the human eye's interpretation of a rose. Roses are much more beautiful than that. Roses are a vibrational event, a syntropy event that organizes itself into sacred geometry in the way in which those petals organize themselves, so that actually becomes a vortex of energy that would transmit a frequency of compassion, love. That is a beauty you cannot see with your eyes. So how do you know that's true about a rose, Zach? That sounds kind of romantic and silly. I have a sense of that because I'm increasingly learning to let go of my human senses and tune into my soul sense. There's a North Star inside of me that knows my path, that knows my purpose, that knows what I signed up for at the tipping point of all things for humanity in the 6th great extinction. Why did I show up right now? And when I tune into that, the relaxation that happens through my whole body is profound. There is no fear, there is no guilt, and there is no shame. There's only a sense of deep self, and it showed up on purpose. And the more you can connect your human heart and your human mind to that vibration of your deep knowingness, a lot of people say, I get goosebumps, or you do this or that. There's some extra sensory events happening in you in those moments when you tune in or you hear somebody else speak truth. That's the sense you need to start to depend on. Tune out your visual experience of the spreadsheets at the end of the day that are telling you how much money you have in your bank account. Tune out of the listening to your news stream. Tune out of the visual experience of information overload on your Instagram feed. Tune out of that stuff. Tune into you. Tune into this soul vibration. and you will be set free. You will be liberated, and you will have the opportunity, if you are willing, to die to yourself today and become a fuller expression of your soul journey tomorrow.
That's really good. I would just it's wonderful, Zach. You're such an eloquent speaker to this. The only thing that I would add is a couple things. One is just this is the power of forgiveness. As people have asked me for my kind of COVID recipe, how do you, or I'd say I kind of developed this kind of 8-plan build your immune system, your immune system thing. It's what I like to hear Dr. Fauci say when he steps to the microphone. Instead of that, we've got another vaccine. How about saying, let's not drink Coke for a week, that sort of thing.
Revolutionary, Joel.
Yeah. And the last item on that kind of checklist of immune builders is make a list of everyone that has hurt you, wronged you, done you unfair, and forgive them. And just go down the list and forgive them. There are a lot of people that say forgiveness is primarily for you, not the other person. And I think there's because I can't make somebody forgive me, but I can forgive them whether they forgive me or not. And so this buildup of resentment, and again, in our culture right now, we have resentment and vengeance issues. Zach, I know you see it every day. This somebody did me wrong. I mean, I don't want to get all political and all this, but there is so much. I got dealt an unfair hand, and the fact is, to just go on from forgiveness, the fact is that we don't become us until we're what we say around here at the farm. We say we like people who are happy in their own skin. What that means is that you know who you are, what you're here for, and what you're doing. How do we make sacrifice, death? How do we make death sacred? We make death sacred by having a noble, righteous life that preceded the sacrifice. Very few people weep over. Well, let me just say, a murderer, okay, that's executed. I mean, that's tragic, but it's not tragic like the first responders that went into the towers and the towers collapsed on them. When in New York. That's nobility. That's noble, sacred purpose that then develops a sacrifice. And so here, of course, we are in animals, pastured animals, and so we see, as Zach alluded to, we see death pretty closely a lot of the times. But here's the thing: all of these beings have been able to fully express their physiological. We've reverenced and respected, whether it's to tomato, a cow, or whatever it is. We've tried to create a habitat that allows the full expression of its being's identity to be expressed. And it is in that fulfillment, that happiness, that elevates the sacrifice, the death, if you will, everything's deteriorating, everything's going to die eventually, but that fullness of life is what elevates the death to a place of sacredness rather than sacrilege. And that's the difference between, for example, a chicken that's slaughtered at Tyson and a chicken that we do, is because Tyson demeans the chicken throughout its life, which makes a sacrilege of the sacrifice. Here, it's elevated to a place of honor and respect. And that's the same with, tomatoes that are grown in compost, lovingly prepared, nurtured, and humbly developed in the pattern of carbon and organic matter decomposition, versus one that's just injected with chemical fertilizers, NPK, and like an IV. That's the difference. So the fact that right now I think the Business Journal say 80% of Americans hate their job. Think about that. 80% of Americans hate their job. And, you know, again, I don't want to go on from a rabbit trail, but think about the societal damage that we have not been able to create sacred occupational spaces. We have not messaged sacred, noble mission. You know, that's, and so people imagine getting up every day, going to do something that you don't like. I mean, I as somebody who very early on, even as a child, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I pursued it from day one, and I've had this wonderful life advantage of always doing exactly what I wanted to do, loved to do, and was good at. And I realized that's a privilege that almost nobody has. Very few people have. You know, I got to get up and go to work. You know, and it's this. And of course, now the workplace has become a new minefield of mandates and masking and isolation and quarantines, and you better not get sick, and if you don't provide a safe place, I'm gonna sue you, turn you into OSHA, whatever. I mean, we just live in this quagmire of litigation, finger pointing, and all that. And I think what Zach has so eloquently articulated is, you just got to give it up. You got to forgive it, you know, and focus on what can I give back? What can I be grateful for? What can I appreciate about where I am, and turn my lemons into lemonade, turn my context into a gracious, appreciative place of mission and ministry. And so here at the farm, we spend a lot of time. I mean, I've got our mission statement right here. I mean, I quote it almost daily to the team, to myself. It's posted here where I can see it, you know, to develop agricultural prototypes that are environmentally, economically, and emotionally enhancing and facilitate their duplication throughout the world. You know, that we all need a mission statement. Because that creates sacred legacy in our lives and allows us to dismiss a lot of this kind of chaff, you know, that comes in, as Zach was saying, from, you know, social media, news, that sort of thing. Man, you know, you gotta get on your horse, get on your journey, and get on with it, you know, and not get distracted about all this other stuff.
So much wisdom, so much light in this conversation, and forgiveness is the key. And again, this reverence for life that you both have, this, you know, there is ecstasy in the present moment, in enjoying human connection. The simplicity of coming back to who we are is what each of you embodies. So sitting down with the physician and the farmer to have this conversation about life, about soul purpose, about healing the earth, and coming back to the heartbeat of the kitchen is the medicine that the world needs now more than ever. And it's a testament to the work that you've been doing over decades, and our time is now. So I thank you both for your time and being here, and for absolutely every soul that is on the other side of these cameras that is gathering in this time and place. And I know that all is well because of a conversation like this, because of the bright, hope-filled souls on the other side of this camera. And 2022 offers so much potential. And each of you has lit such a light in my heart, and countless others. So again, thank you. And everybody, these two, you heard it. I know Zach's doing some coaching. I know Joel invited y'all to the farm. So if you don't get more of this goodness, it's your own fault.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. It's been a delight and a pleasure. Thank you.
You make my year, literally, in this conversation. Thank you both so much. I'll see you soon.